Thank you, Glory Bound. My next guest is Jonathan Lotson. He is the author of Effective Leadership, Top 10 Areas Every Christian Leader Should Consider When Moving Towards Effective Leadership. I'm going to dive right into this because I opened in your table of contents, I am a leader, your table of contents, number one,
yes, ma'am.
Self-care.
Yes.
Let's start off with the hard stuff. Why is it so difficult for Christian leaders to stop and handle self-care?
Yes, ma'am. First of all, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
And to answer the question, I feel a lot of leaders feel as if they have so much to do, and they're trying to check things off of their list, forgetting that we are human beings, not human doings. And so sometimes we focus so much on what we're called to do that we forget that God is also trying to work in and through us. And so we get so busy with the job of what we are tasked to do, and we take it for granted that it's impossible for us to continuously keep going without taking breaks. As if any racer, any car, you can't keep driving from here to California and feel
without putting gas in.
Right. And so it's the same thing with us. And so we have to make sure that we have to take time, because if we're too busy to spend time with God, that means that we're too busy.
Let's roll this back a minute.
Certainly.
For every author,
yes,
there is a story inside of you that brought you to this story.
Certainly.
Did this story, this handbook, if you will, effectively change your life as you were writing it, or because you lived it and then had to write it?
I would say it's because I lived it and then I had to write it. Growing up, I've always been involved in the church, and I've been privileged to see a lot of things behind the scenes. I grew up in my great uncle's church in Washington, D.C., and throughout life, as time went on, I kind of, it wasn't cool to be a middle school preacher, if you will. So I did my own thing, hid behind music, ended up going to Berklee College of Music in Boston, Massachusetts,
yes.
And there I had this strong sense of conviction, and from there I went to get my master's and then got my doctorate in strategic leadership. And throughout this whole journey of mine, I just had an urgency to really make sure that I help leaders. I just have a desire to help the church. I believe that the church is one of the greatest pillars, one of the greatest avenues to help our people. And as it was back in the day during the civil rights movement, it still is a beacon of light even today. And I believe that the Christian leader, if you're a pastor, if you're a leader, if you're just a leader in your home, I believe that these things that I talk about in this book is helpful to you, because it helped me. When I'm thinking about how I'm going to be successful, I have to make sure that I'm innovative. I have to make sure I have self-care, and throughout my life, moments in which I didn't practice these things, you can really tell, you can really feel it, because it comes out in your leadership.
Yes.
And it's come out in mine. And so I really had a burden to really help all who are pursuing leadership and who are already walking in their leadership journey.
It's interesting that you said that you looked back at being at your uncle's church,
yes,
growing up there, and then your own personal walk. When you come out of those loving arms of the church family,
yes,
and you begin to go to college,
mm-hmm,
and you experience the different world.
It's different.
It's very different.
Yes.
So it takes a different kind of self-care.
Yes.
It takes a spiritual self-care that answers the natural self-care.
Right.
I noticed that in your book, you have scriptures on every few pages.
Yes.
There's scriptures that uphold what you are speaking in these pages.
Yes, ma'am.
As you move through the writing of this book, the understanding of the strategic plan of all of life,
yes,
the self-care, all of these things, how have you found that people are able to step out of the safety net, the safety walls of the church family, and maneuver in this opposite, sometimes very opposite world that we live in?
Yeah. Well, I really believe that oftentimes people, parishioners in particular, we put the responsibility of their walk and their, how they journey through life in the hands of the preacher or the minister. Mm-hmm. And I'm a minister as well, and I know that we do have an obligation. However, at the end of the day, every single person, they have a obligation to themselves and to their own personal walk to do the best that they can do. And so I really believe that when people put things into their own hands and say, at the end of the day, this is my journey, this is my life, and begin to take on these steps outside of the church walls and really take on their own journey, they really begin to get some growth. And one of the main things is accountability, which is a section in my book. Sometimes we want to hold other people accountable.
Yes.
But we fail to hold our own selves accountable. And in order for us to be effective leaders, if you're in your home or relationship or whatever leadership capacity you're in, you have to hold your own self accountable.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting that you brought up accountability, because that's exactly where I was going next. I think that we live in the understanding that certainly we are accountable to God,
yes,
but there is an order of how life is to move given by God. It's God the Father,
yes,
Jesus Christ his Son. In my instance, it's my husband, then myself, then my children.
Yeah.
Now, when you say that, that's not always popular,
Yes.
because it is the distinct order. However, it's a distinct order that God has given. It is not choice to do it. I am accountable to move in that order.
Yes.
So as accountability becomes a forefront thought in my mind, accountability should also be a forethought in your mind.
Right.
As we move as the body of Christ, do you find that accountability is growing, that we are all coming together and recognizing our own accountability in our homes and in our churches and in our businesses and in our everyday walk? Or are you finding that we cloak accountability with sharp answers and great bombshells, if you will?
Yeah. Unfortunately, there are a lot of people who don't want to be accountable to anybody.
For anything.
For anything. And that really puts us in a bad place. However, I do notice that there are moments in time in which we do come together. And I think that we have to be more intentional about creating these instances or these avenues, if you will, to become accountable. And one of the major things or responsibilities of a leader is to create an accountability culture in which you create where it's welcome, where it's open.
Yes.
And when the leader, him or herself, is open to accountability as well, being held accountable themselves.
You know, I think what I find interesting, I'm a leader right here, right now. You're a leader right here, right now.
Yes.
But if my husband, who is normally with me and hosting this program, was with me,
yes,
my leadership comes within his leadership.
Yeah.
So I don't feel like he's taking a leadership away from me. I feel like we are partnering in leadership as unto God,
yes,
according to the way God's structure of my household, of his household,
yes,
runs. But again, that is something that you have to grasp, hold on to, want to,
yes,
to live in.
You do.
And it's not necessarily the story of the day, especially when you look outside of the church family.
Yeah.
And sometimes even inside the church family.
You're right. You're right about it.
You have some great topics here. One of the things I want to bring up also is innovation.
Yes.
You know, God and his word is the most amazing innovator I've ever seen. Like sometimes I'm reading today. 5 years from now, that same passage of scripture will have a brand new light to me. It innovates inside of me
Yes.
with my maturity.
That's right.
Talk to us about why innovation is important in our life as a Christian leader.
Certainly. Well, innovation is important because in order to stay relevant, in order to engage, in order to do anything, you have to be willing to be innovative. But the thing that holds so many people back is they're afraid of taking risks. And so we have to get to a place where we're open to taking risks, even if no one is with you, even if no one backing you, if no one is standing by your side, we have to be willing to take risks. And it reminds me of Henry Ford, who was innovative in the transportation industry. He didn't create the transportation industry, but he was innovative and moved people from the horse and carriage stage to actually having automobiles. And he received
so much flack.
He did. He received so much flack, but he kept on going. And I really believe that everybody, they have to think within themselves that God has given them something. And when they know that God has given them something, they have to chase after it if no one is jumping on the bandwagon when they first say it. And the thing is, it's been often said that if you say something, you have a dream and you say it and no one says that it's impossible, then maybe you're on to something. Because when God does something, oftentimes it's so big and it's even bigger than what you can even think or imagine. And so innovation, again, it takes risks, and we have to make sure that we're open to it, because when we are innovative, we're opening ourselves up to see God move in a tremendous, tremendous way.
In a tremendous, tremendous way. I totally agree. I think that part of understanding innovation is understanding our ability to be great within the greatness that He's given.
Yes.
Our ability to understand that we are to be strong and courageous. And if He said be strong and courageous multiple times, there must be something that you have to be strong and courageous about.
Right.
So as we innovate, I think one of the things that, and you've mentioned it so well, one of the things that we have to step outside of is our own closed-mindedness with ourselves.
Yes.
Sometimes we just don't think of ourselves as the one who has that innovation inside of us.
Right.
But as in fact, God has given us each a special gift of innovation, a special gift of change and growth.
That's right.
When you took a look at this daunting task of writing,
yes,
did you feel as if you were about to innovate the leadership thought?
Yes. My goal is to really bring so many components together to really make a whole leader, if you will. There are so many leaders who, have a little of this, have a little bit of that. But I think that in this day and age, we really have to be whole in our leadership, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Barna Group came out with a statistic not too long ago that 82% of young adults feel like there's a leadership crisis in our society because there's just not enough good leaders.
Yes.
And I believe that the 10 things that I discuss in this book will help every Christian leader, no matter if they're a pastor, if they're a leader in their home or their relationship or whatever the case may be, especially where I talk about suppressing leader ego. Because I believe that ego gets us in trouble a whole lot. And if all leaders can really get our egos in check, oh man,
okay, now see, you meddling now, but I'm gonna go up in that. Okay, so here is suppress leader ego.
Yes.
Here is a interesting and very sad component sometimes within the church, is that 5 leaders get together and they forget who is actually leading.
That's right.
How do we get past that leadership ego? Is it simply let's read the word and grow up? Or is it more of there is a methodology that is outside of the Christian home, that is outside of the church, that moves Christian leaders and presses Christian leaders in such a negative way that we have to recognize those things as well?
We definitely do. And just to set the record clear, the ego is not necessarily completely bad. And that's how I open up the chapter. Because our ego, it is, it deals with our self-esteem and so on and so forth, which is important. But our leader ego needs to be suppressed if we go overboard, if you will. And so 2 things I talk about in the book is mentorship and coaching, which is important because if no one is telling you you're getting a little beside yourself, 9 times out of 10.
You're beside yourself.
Right, and so you need someone who's going to say, hey, you need to watch what you're doing, watch what you're saying, and we need to create guardrails and parameters, and we need to assess ourselves. That's another thing in there, and that helps us with our leader ego. And when we assess ourselves and allow other people to assess us, then we really begin to get a look at our own selves from a different perspective.
I think one of the real cool things to do is to have a council of leaders that you trust and that will not just tell you what you want to hear, but will tell you what you need to hear. The truth, the things that will help you grow, and instead of those things that keep you in the same place and lacking the growth that God has placed before you. those leaders around you that are your great counsel
Yes.
are real important, and selecting the right ones
You have to.
are real important.
Yes, ma'am.
When you look back at this book and
Yes.
all of the wonderful chapters, because the great titles and in my look through, very, very good. Congratulations on
Thank you. Appreciate that.
what God has done through you and in you.
Yes.
As you look at this book, is there one thing that you wish you could have been able to put in there as well?
If I were to add one more thing, I don't know. I don't think it's one more thing that I wanted to add. In doing this, I didn't just do it by myself. I sought other leaders who I look up to, my pastor, Bishop Hogan, and to so many others, and I picked their brain to see what's going on in our church today. And I was very strategic in coming up with those 10 things. And for right now, I really do feel comfortable and a sense of peace with the 10 things that we have in there.
That's good stuff. That is
Yes,
good
ma'am.
stuff. Jonathan Lotson, thank you so much. Thank you for being here. Thank you for the transparency.
Yes, ma'am.
And thank you for hearing these steps that are necessary to make the effective leader. Effective leadership, top 10 areas every Christian leader should consider when moving towards effective leadership.
That's it.
That is it. Thank you for
Yes.
being here. This is so awesome, you guys. If you want to give a book for Christmas to someone that you know is leading in a great journey, this may be the book to do that with. All right, ladies and gentlemen, Glory Bound Quartet, remember me.